The slap connected before the pie even hit the floor. Pecans, caramel, and the last shred of my patience exploded across the cold tile. By midnight, I had the bruise, the police report, and the exact blueprint for my Thanksgiving revenge. She thought fear would keep me quiet. She forgot I designed spaces for a living. And when pushed, I designed traps. My name is Leah Ward. I am 29 years old, and I am an interior architect. My specialty is high-end restaurant design, a field built on the precise understanding of light, texture, and human flow. I work for Ridge and Harbor Studio, one of the top firms in Westbridge. We create spaces where people feel something. My job is to translate a chef's vision into brass, velvet, and reclaimed wood. It requires discipline, a thick skin, and an obsessive attention to detail. I am good at my job. Last month, our firm won the coveted Calder Prize for the Althea, a project I led from the first sketch to the final inspection. The design involved cantilevered lighting and a 3-story living greenery wall. It was complex, expensive, and a massive success. The press called it a new benchmark in experiential dining. This success afforded me a level of financial independence I had worked relentlessly to achieve. My life was ordered, my finances were sound, and my professional reputation was solid. This success was also, apparently, a problem. My family lives in Maple Hollow, a wealthy suburb about an hour north of the city. It is polite, manicured, and built on convenient silences. My father is Richard Hale. My grandmother, Evelyn, is his mother, and his wife, my stepmother, is Cassandra Hale. Cassandra is a local star in the philanthropic world. Her face is on every gala invitation and charity luncheon banner in the county. She is beautiful, relentlessly charming in public, and operates the Hale Foundation with an iron will. She raises impressive sums of money for causes that always seem to involve a red carpet and a photographer. We also have my half-sister, Sloane, who is 19 and lives entirely under Cassandra's shadow. In our family's ecosystem, there is a core, unspoken rule. Cassandra is the sun. All light must originate from or reflect upon her. My modest, quiet, and entirely separate success in Westbridge was not seen as an achievement to be celebrated. It was seen as showing off. It was an aggressive, impolite attempt to steal her spotlight. My father, Richard, has mastered the art of neutrality, which in practice is simply abdication. His silence is a fortress where he hides while Cassandra lobs grenades. He is a man who finds confrontation deeply inconvenient. This is why my real family, the one I built for myself, is back in the city. June Whitaker, a physical therapist who can reset a joint and deliver a blistering pep talk in the same breath. Theo Martin, a graphic designer who sees the world in grids and color palettes, and who has cataloged every one of Cassandra's microaggressions for years. And Riley Quinn. Riley is a baker, an artist whose medium is flour and butter. She runs a small, fiercely popular patisserie called The Gilded Crust, and understands that baking is a form of control, a way of imposing delicious order on a chaotic world. For this Thanksgiving, I decided to bring a pie, not a store-bought token, but my own pecan caramel pie. It's a recipe I spent years perfecting, with a short crust that uses cold vodka and a filling laced with bourbon and dark chocolate shavings. It was a piece of my world, my craft. I was going to Maple Hollow for the holiday. This decision was not made lightly. I knew the landscape. My entire life had been a masterclass in navigating Cassandra's insecurities. There were the birthdays, my 16th, my 18th, my 21st, all unfortunately coinciding with some vital last-minute fundraising emergency. I learned to stop expecting my day to be my own. My graduation from design school was overshadowed by a glowing magazine profile of Cassandra, which she had framed and placed on the piano, angled toward the front door. The spotlight was her territory, and she defended its borders. My defense was to build my own territory. A year ago, I closed on a small cabin at Pinecrest Ridge. It sits on a quiet lake, 2 hours west, in the opposite direction of Maple Hollow. I bought it with my own money. the down payment coming directly from the bonus I received for the Althea project. It is my sanctuary. The walls are exposed pine, the furniture is vintage mid-century, and the kitchen is designed exactly for me. It is the only place I feel I can breathe to the bottom of my lungs. It is a space I control. Cassandra has only seen photographs of it. "This house is not a showroom for your projects, Leah," she had said dismissively over the phone, as if my creating a home for myself was just another tacky attempt at self-promotion. I was not planning to go for Thanksgiving. I had planned a quiet 4-day weekend at the cabin with June and Theo, but then my grandmother, Evelyn, called. Her voice was thin, tired. "Leah, please," she'd pleaded. "It's Thanksgiving, the whole family, together, just for one dinner. It would mean the world to me. No drama, just peace, for me." She was the only one who could have convinced me. Her request was a guilt-wrapped olive branch, so I agreed. I would drive up, stay for dinner, and be back in my own bed by 10. A surgical strike of familial duty. The day of, I baked the pie. It came out of the oven perfect. The pecans toasted, the caramel bubbling. I let it cool completely before placing it in a heavy, cream-colored ceramic pie dish. I slid it into a professional bakery box and tied it with a simple, elegant gray ribbon. As I got my coat, I did one last thing. I picked up a small silver brooch from my dresser. It was minimalist, a sleek bar of brushed metal. It was also a high-definition body camera. I had bought it 6 months ago after a contractor on a job site got verbally aggressive, backing me into a corner of an unfinished kitchen. I wore it for late-night site visits, for walking alone to my car from the studio. It was a silent, personal insurance policy in a world that often refused to believe women. I pinned it to the lapel of my black wool coat. I did not want a war. I truly did not. I was tired of the Cold Wars, the proxy battles, the silent treatments. I was bringing the pie as a contribution, not a statement. I just wanted a quiet dinner. I wanted to eat turkey, listen to my grandmother tell the same stories she always tells, and leave. I wanted, for just one afternoon, to be acknowledged as a part of the family, not as a competitor. I carried the box to my car. As I set it on the passenger seat, the warm, rich scent of cinnamon, bourbon, and toasted nuts filled the space. It was the smell of warmth, of comfort, of generosity. It was the smell of the pressure cooker just before it blows. The house at Maple Hollow was a stage set, and Cassandra was its sole director. The kitchen was the command center, all white marble and warm. Strategic uplighting designed to make everyone look younger and richer. She moved through the space not like a host, but like a television producer managing a live broadcast, adjusting a flower arrangement here, laughing too loudly with a donor there, her voice a polished instrument of social control. The air was thick with the competing smells of roasting turkey and Cassandra's expensive perfume. I walked in holding the box. "Happy Thanksgiving." My grandmother Evelyn was the first to see me. She was sitting on a stool by the counter, looking small against the massive, cathedral-like island. A genuine smile broke across her face. "Leah, you made it. And what's that?" "Just a pie," I said, placing the box on the counter. I opened the lid. A few guests nearby turned. One of them, a woman in a cashmere twin set, leaned in. "My goodness, what is that? The smell is incredible." Cassandra glided over, her smile bright and hard. "Leah, you're here. We were just talking about the winter gala. We finally secured the sponsorship from the bank." She directed this last part to the cashmere woman, neatly hijacking the conversation. The pie was dismissed. But the woman didn't take the cue. "No, really, Cassandra, that looks professional." She glanced at the 3 perfect but sterile-looking desserts already arranged on the sideboard, clearly from a high-end caterer. "That smells 10 times better than anything I've ever ordered." The air didn't just chill, it froze. The background chatter in the kitchen dipped. Cassandra's smile tightened, the skin pulling at the corners of her eyes. "Well, we don't show off in this house, dear," she said, her voice a playful sing-song that was anything but. Sloane, my half-sister, materialized at my elbow. She was wringing her hands, her eyes fixed on the marble. "Leah, why did you do that?" she whispered, frantic. You know her rules about this. I ignored them both. I was here for Evelyn. I was here to be a normal person bringing a dish to a family holiday. I picked up a pie server. "I'll just cut a few slices for anyone who wants to try." This was the transgression, my refusal to be diminished. Cassandra moved so fast I barely registered it. She grabbed the heavy ceramic pie dish. Her fingers dug into my wrist as she tried to wrench it from my hand. "I told you," she hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper meant only for me. "This is not your showroom. You will not come into my home and try to make me look small." "Cassandra, let go," I said, my voice firm, level. I tried to pull my wrist back, but her grip was like steel. "I just brought dessert. I told Evelyn I would." "You arrogant little—" She let go of the pie dish with one hand and used that hand to slap me. The sound was sharp, a wet, ugly crack that echoed off the hard, expensive surfaces. It was louder than any breaking glass. It shocked the room into absolute silence. The blow landed on my cheekbone, stinging, instantly hot. My hand, the one she had gripped, was released. The pie dish, unbalanced, tipped. It seemed to hang in the air for a second. A perfect, slow-motion arc of caramel and pecans, before it crashed onto the floor and shattered. My pie, my recipe, my peace offering, was a ruin on the imported tile. For a second, no one moved. Then, my father's voice, from the doorway. He hadn't moved to intervene. He was just watching. "Cassandra, Leah, let's not make a scene." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What in God's name did you just do?" Just a weak plea to maintain the facade. The guests, frozen in their social discomfort, suddenly found the crown molding fascinating. They turned away. They sipped their wine. They chose, instantly, to be blind. I felt the throbbing in my cheek. I looked down at my wrist, at the white, angry fingerprints already turning red. My other hand instinctively touched the brooch on my lapel. The small, dark lens was pointed directly at where she had stood. It had seen everything. It had heard everything. "Cassandra!" My grandmother's voice was a thin, sharp blade. "You will not. That is enough." Cassandra, seeing she had lost the room, did the only thing she could. She collapsed. Her face crumpled into a mask of theatrical grief, and she burst into tears, leaning heavily on my father. "She did this on purpose," she sobbed, loud enough for the entire ground floor to hear. "She came here to ruin this for me, to embarrass me in front of my friends." The narrative was set. I was the attacker. She was the victim. I looked at my father, who was now stroking her hair, murmuring comforts. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at the shattered ceramic, the sticky, wasted pie on the floor. I turned and walked out. My body was humming, a high-frequency vibration of adrenaline and ice. I did not run. I walked past the averted eyes of the guests in the foyer. I pulled my keys from my pocket. Outside, the cold air was a relief against my burning face. A few, delicate snowflakes were beginning to drift down, landing on the windshield of my car. I got in, locked the doors, and just sat for a minute, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, but my eyes were dry. The part of me that used to cry over this family, that used to beg for their approval, was gone. It had been slapped out of me. What was left was something hard, dense, and structural. I pulled out of the driveway and drove a mile down the road, parking under a streetlight. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. It was a text from June, on a scale of 1 to Cassandra. "How bad? Need me to come get you?" I looked at my reflection in the dark rear-view mirror. The red handprint was stark and clear against my skin. This wasn't a family drama anymore. This wasn't Cassandra being Cassandra. This was assault. This was the line. I took a deep, steadying breath. I put the car in gear. I am an architect. I solve problems. I build things to last. And sometimes, I oversee demolitions. My new project had just begun. Safety first, Then, legal. I drove for exactly 15 minutes, my hands steady on the wheel, before pulling into the all-night pharmacy in the next town over. The fluorescent lights were aggressively bright, humming in the silence. I bought a bottle of water and a disposable camera. I used my phone first, in the harsh light of the empty parking lot, documenting my face. The red handprint was clear, the welt already rising on my cheekbone. Then I documented my wrist, the bruising from her grip already darkening. I took photos with the disposable camera as a physical backup. I noted the time, 10:03 p.m. My next stop was the 24-hour urgent care clinic. I sat in a plastic chair under a flickering television screen, feeling strangely calm. I was a project manager assessing a structural failure. The triage nurse took my blood pressure. The doctor was kind, his eyes full of practiced neutrality. He documented blunt force trauma to the left zygomatic arch and contusions consistent with forceful gripping on the right wrist. He asked if I wanted to speak to a social worker. I said no. I just needed the medical report. I paid in cash. In the car, I called the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I explained the situation in the flat. Precise terms of an architect reading a blueprint. I was assaulted by my stepmother. I am in a safe location now. I need to know the correct procedure for filing a report and ensuring my safety. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. She walked me through the steps for a temporary restraining order and advised me on digital security. My final stop of the night was the Maple Hollow Police Department. The building was quiet, smelling of stale coffee and disinfectant. The officer at the desk looked bored until I said the word assault. I presented my medical report. I explained that I had video evidence. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I was simply a citizen filing a report. He took my statement. I left at 1:30 in the morning with a case number. That number felt heavier than a brick, a cornerstone for the foundation I was about to lay. I drove to my apartment in Westbridge, not the cabin. I double-locked the door, engaged the security system, and finally, carefully, unpinned the brooch. I plugged it into my laptop. Watching the footage was worse than living it. The high-definition audio was clear, the casual cruelty in Cassandra's voice, the sound of her palm hitting my skin, the crash of the ceramic, and worst of all, my father's weak, useless voice. Let's not make a scene. I saved the file in 3 separate, encrypted cloud locations. I sent one copy to my personal, secure email. The last copy I attached to an email to Francine Adler. Francine is my lawyer. She handled the contracts for my cabin and a freelance project. Her specialty is high-conflict corporate litigation, but I knew she was what I needed. A shark. Her reply came at 7 a.m. Leah, do not speak to your father or Cassandra. Do not post anything online. I am filing for an emergency TRO this morning, citing the assault and the video evidence. We need to preserve all digital communications. This is now a legal matter. Call me at 9. The dam of family obligation broke, and the relief was immediate. I was no longer their daughter. I was a client. My phone rang at 8. It was my father. I looked at the screen, took a deep breath, and hit record on a second device before answering. Leah, he began, his voice thick with false sincerity. This has all gone too far. You need to stop this. Think about what this will do to the family. Cassandra is devastated. She just loses her temper. You know that. Don't destroy everything over a misunderstanding. Did she misunderstand when she hit me? I asked, my voice as flat as a schematic. Now, Leah, let's not use that kind of language. Just come home. We can talk this out. Apologize to her for provoking her with that pie. I saved the recording. I labeled it Richard Hale, 8 a.m., and sent it to Francine. An hour later, a notification popped up on my social media. Cassandra. She hadn't posted a direct statement, but a vague, philosophical quote about the pain of dealing with unstable people who crave attention, and how true charity means forgiving those who try to harm you. I screenshotted it, captured the URL, and time-stamped the file, sent to Francine. My friends arrived that afternoon. June came first. her physical therapist bag in hand. She gently examined my wrist. "This is significant soft tissue damage. Leah, you're going to need to ice this for 48 hours, and I want you to wear a brace. She's lucky she didn't fracture the scaphoid." She looked at my face, her professional mask slipping into anger. "I'm so sorry. Lee?" Riley came next, carrying a bakery box. Inside was a perfect, glistening pecan pie. "This one," Riley said, her voice fierce, "will be cut, served, and eaten in a place where the person who made it is respected. Your apartment, tonight, with forks." Theo arrived last. He didn't bring food or medical supplies. He brought a portable whiteboard. "Okay," he said, clicking open a black marker. "Let's map the escalation." We sat for an hour as Theo, the graphic designer, created a timeline. He pinpointed the exact moment. "Here," he said, tapping the board. "The guest compliments your pie. She praises your work over the catered work Cassandra paid for. The trigger wasn't the pie. Leah, it was the compliment. It was a public validation of your skill in her domain." He was right. It was never about the pie. It was about my competence. That realization sent a new chill down my spine. My competence was my life. My cabin at Pinecrest Ridge was my sanctuary, paid for by that competence. I called a security firm immediately. "I need a full upgrade at my property at Pinecrest Ridge. Smart locks, motion sensors, and cameras, everything you have." The attack came faster than I expected, and not at my cabin. The next morning, I received a forwarded email from my boss at Ridge and Harbor. It was from a major client, one whose restaurant project I was scheduled to lead next quarter. The email was polite but concerned. The client had received an anonymous warning from a supposed concerned party that I was professionally unstable and prone to erratic emotional outbursts. The anonymous source suggested the firm might want to assign a more stable architect to the project. I stared at the words. This was not a vague social media post. This was a targeted strike at my career, at my income, at my independence. Francine's voice was sharp over the phone. "This is exactly what I expected. The Hale Foundation has a professional PR team. This has their fingerprints all over it. They are trying to paint you as the aggressor, the unstable variable. They know they can't win on the facts of the assault, so they're attacking your credibility." I stood up and walked to my window, looking down at the West Bridge traffic. She could have my father. She could have the house in Maple Hollow. She could have her fake charity galas. But she would not take my career. She would not take the life I had built from scratch. No one gets to hit me and then try to burn down my life. "Francine," I said, my voice quiet, but the decision made. "Schedule the hearing for the permanent restraining order. Prepare the medical evidence and the video. We are not settling. We are not negotiating." I hung up and typed out a short, clear email to my father, my grandmother, and Cassandra's personal address. Effective immediately, all communication with me will be directed through my legal counsel, Francine Adler, at the following address. Do not contact me directly by phone, text, or email. Any attempt to do so will be logged and forwarded to her. I hit send. The boundary was drawn. It was no longer a cracked foundation. It was a steel firewall. The email from my client, the one detailing the anonymous warning about my stability, was the pivot. Cassandra had escalated this from a physical assault to a professional execution. She was trying to make me radioactive, to cut off my income, my independence, my entire identity outside of her toxic orbit. "She's trying to dismantle your life," Theo said, his voice flat. We were at my apartment, the three of them, Theo, June, and Riley, my ad hoc council of war. The whiteboard was back up, this time not with a timeline of the assault, but with a diagram of the new threat. "This is PR," I said, pacing. "This is the Hale Foundation's damage control team. They're not just defending her, they're going on offense." Riley, who had been quietly scrolling through her pastry shop's financial records on her laptop, suddenly stiffened. "The Hale Foundation," she said, not looking up. "I catered their spring forward luncheon last year. It was a nightmare. The payment was a mess. What kind of mess? June asked, pausing from icing my wrist. The invoice. I submitted it to the foundation, and it was rejected. They told me I had to re-invoice a third-party vendor, a consulting firm. It was a huge pain, and it took 90 days to get paid. I remember the name because it was so generic. She turned her laptop around. Northlake Consulting. Theo was at his own laptop before she finished the sentence. His fingers moved with a speed I envied. Northlake Consulting, LLC, he murmured, reading from the screen. Registered in Westbridge, and the address is a P.O. box at a retail mail center. Classic shell. A new kind of coldness settled in my stomach. Theo, I said, pull the foundation's public tax filings, the 990s. He was already there. Okay, Hale Foundation, fiscal year ending last December. Total revenue, just under $2 million. He scrolled. Total program spending, expenses directly related to their charitable mission. He whistled, low and long. Jesus, Leah, it's barely 30%. That's abysmal. The industry standard is at least 75. Where's the rest of it going? June asked, standing up. Administrative costs, Theo said, scrolling faster. Salaries, of course, travel, event production, and, here we go, consulting fees, a massive line item, $400,000 last year. To Northlake Consulting, I said. It wasn't a question. Every dollar, Theo confirmed, his face grim. Paid out in monthly installments for strategic outreach and event management. The room was silent. This was no longer about a slap. The hospital wing, I whispered, a memory clicking into place. Last year, Cassandra was everywhere, all over the local news. The Hale Foundation was pledging 100 new pediatric beds and state-of-the-art monitoring equipment to Maple Hollow General. June, the physical therapist, pulled out her phone. I know the department head over there. My network partner's with them. Let me text him. She stepped away, and we watched her through the glass of my balcony door, her expression growing tighter. She came back in, sliding the door shut. Dr. Eris, she said, her voice shaking with anger. He says the hospital never got the equipment. They got a single check for $20,000, which paid for the press conference and the photo op with the giant check. When the board asked about the beds, Cassandra's team cited unforeseen supply chain disruptions. The pledge just evaporated. The hospital quietly wrote it off as a bad faith promise. They were humiliated. So she fakes it, Riley said. She fakes the charity. She stages it, Theo said, pulling up the foundation's website gallery. He clicked on a photo of Cassandra at a holiday gift drive, handing beautifully wrapped boxes to smiling volunteers. Look at this. As a designer, this is offensive. I looked closer. He was right. The boxes were identical. The lighting perfect. The volunteers were holding the large boxes with one hand, effortlessly. They're empty, I said. They're props. She's not donating goods. She's manufacturing content. I picked up my phone and called Francine. I laid it all out. The shell company, the low program spending, the phantom hospital donation, the staged photos. Francine was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice had lost all its client management warmth. It was pure, cold steel. Leah, you came to me because your stepmother assaulted you. You are now describing a multi-year, potentially million-dollar operation of wire fraud and embezzlement. This is a criminal enterprise hiding behind a non-profit status. But I have no hard proof, I said. Just public filings and a friend's invoice. You need an internal source. You need the bank statements showing the transfers. Without that, it's just smoke, Francine said. This is beyond a simple TRO hearing. This is investigative journalism. I know a reporter, Aria Bell. She's the best investigative freelancer in the state, but she will not touch this unless you bring her a smoking gun. I hung up. A smoking gun? Where would I even... 4 days later, it arrived. Not in my email, but in my secure client portal. the encrypted server I used to share massive architectural blueprints with my clients. An anonymous user had uploaded a single zip file. There was no message. My hands were shaking. I downloaded the file and ran it through 3 different malware scanners before opening it. It was everything. Bank statements from the Hale Foundation's primary account, showing monthly transfers to Northlake Consulting, scans of cashed checks, and finally, the original articles of incorporation for Northlake Consulting, filed 2 years prior. The address was the P.O. Box. The registered agent, the sole signatory on the account, was Sloan Hale. Sloan, my 19-year-old sister, a kid who lived on Instagram and Cassandra's allowance. She was the cutout. She was the legal shield. Cassandra was using her own daughter to launder the money. I immediately forwarded the encrypted file to Francine, who sent it to Aria Bell. Aria's call came an hour later. Her voice was fast, sharp, and entirely devoid of pleasantries. "This is it. The bank transfers are the gun. But they'll pin it all on Sloan. She's the signatory. They'll claim she's a young entrepreneur and you're a jealous sister. We need to tie Northlake directly to Cassandra." "How?" I asked. "Let me work," Aria replied, and hung up. 2 days later, my phone rang again. It was Aria. "The PEO box. The rental agreement is in Sloan's name, but the authorization form, the one that lists who is legally allowed to retrieve the mail, was co-signed. The secondary signature, the one that holds the master key, is Cassandra Hale's. I have a source inside the mail center. It's a perfect match to her driver's license signature. She controls the mailbox. She controls the money." Aria wasn't done. And those staged photos? The empty boxes? The event photographer's assistant thought it was hilarious. They filmed the behind the scenes on their phone. I have 30 seconds of video. Leah, it's Cassandra, in full director mode, yelling at the volunteers. "No, smile, look grateful. Hold the box like it's heavy. For God's sake, we need this for the website." It's the whole performance. We have her. I looked at the files on my screen. The video of the slap, the medical report, the bank transfers, the PO, box authorization, the video of the staged donation. This was the end of my family. Exposing this would destroy my father, who was either complicit or criminally negligent. It would drag Sloan through a legal hell. It would incinerate the Hale name. But the memory of her hand on my face, the sound it made, and now, the email to my client, the attempt to destroy my life's work, the assault was just the visible part of the rot. I called Francine. "We have it all?" "Good," she said. "Now we form the strategy. It's 3-pronged. 1, the legal prong. We proceed with the permanent restraining order. The assault is the foundation. 2, the professional prong. You must protect your career. 3, the media prong. Aria holds the story. We use it as leverage. Or, if Cassandra escalates, we deploy it." "She will escalate," I said, the certainty cold in my gut. "I know," Francine said. "And Leah, listen to me. You are no longer fighting your stepmother about a family dinner. You are threatening her kingdom. You are threatening her money, her reputation, and her freedom. She will try to burn you to the ground. Be ready." The counterstrike came the next day. It was an email from my father, sent to Francine, but he had copied the 2 senior partners at Ridge and Harbor. It was a declaration of war. He accused me of a disturbed and vindictive campaign of extortion. He claimed I was lashing out after refusing mental health support. He demanded I publicly apologize to Cassandra and the Foundation for these slanderous lies and drop the frivolous restraining order. If I did not comply within 48 hours, he would be forced to inform my firm's entire client list about my deeply unstable and threatening behavior. He was trying to make me unemployable. He was trying to finish the job Cassandra had started. I looked at my partners' names on the email. I couldn't let them be collateral damage. I spent the next 2 days on the phone. I called my 3 most loyal clients, the ones I had built relationships with for years. I told them I was leaving Ridge and Harbor to start my own boutique studio, Ward Atelier. I didn't tell them why. I just told them it was time. I offered to bring their projects with me, honoring the current contracts and offering a 10% reduction in my fees for the next year as a show of good faith. All three agreed immediately. They weren't loyal to the firm. They were loyal to my work. I was detaching myself from the building Cassandra was trying to burn down. I was drawing my own blueprints for the next phase. My father's ultimatum, his threat to destroy my career by painting me as unstable, was a declaration of total war. He expected me to crumble. He expected the fear of professional ruin to accomplish what the physical assault had not. He, like Cassandra, fundamentally misunderstood me. I am an architect. When a client demands the impossible on an unstable site, I do not quit. I re-engineer the foundation. My resignation from Ridge and Harbor was finalized in a single, respectful meeting. My partners were shocked but understood my need to leave, especially after I showed them the email from my father. They were lawyers in their own right and recognized the legal jeopardy he had put them in. We parted amicably, with my 3 largest clients in tow. That night, my apartment was filled with the scent of bourbon, caramel, and toasted pecans. Riley had arrived with what she called the Phoenix Pie. It was identical to the one destroyed on Cassandra's floor. "This one," she declared, setting it on my counter, "has a different destiny." June and Theo were already there. Wine poured. The whiteboard was wiped clean of attack plans and was now covered in branding mock-ups for my new venture. "It needs a name," Theo said, uncapping a marker. "Ward Atelier," I said, the name already formed. Atelier, a workshop, a place of craft. "I love it," he said, writing it in a clean sans serif font. "Strong, elegant, yours." Riley produced a serving knife. "Leah, you do the honors." I looked at the 3 of them, my real family. My hand was steady as I made the first cut. The knife slid through the crisp crust. I plated the first slice and handed it to Riley. She raised her fork. "A toast. To pie," she said, her voice quiet but fierce. "To pie that is cut, served, and celebrated in a place where the person who made it is respected." "Here, here," June murmured, raising her glass. We ate the pie. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. It was the taste of safety. The next day, the work of building Ward Atelier began. While I finalized the legal paperwork, Theo finished the branding. He designed a logo that was clean and structural, the W and the A intersecting to form the gable of a roof, a symbol of shelter and strength. My first act as Ward Atelier was not to chase contracts. It was to take control of the narrative. I filmed a video. I set up my camera in my own kitchen, the small, efficient, sunlit kitchen in my Westbridge apartment. I was not wearing a suit. I was in a simple linen shirt. I was not talking about architecture, not directly. I was baking. "Some people think design is about how things look," I said, my voice calm, addressing the camera as I rolled out the short crust. "I've always believed it's about how things work. It's about chemistry, structure, and providing a foundation where good things can happen." For 7 minutes, I walked my audience through the pecan pie recipe. I measured the bourbon. I toasted the nuts. I talked about the specific chemical reaction of the caramel. I didn't mention my family. I didn't mention Maple Hollow. I didn't mention the slap. I ended the video by pulling the finished pie from the oven. "A recipe, like a blueprint, is just a set of instructions," I said, setting it on the counter to cool. "The real magic is in the execution. It's in the hands of the person who builds it. Build something strong. Build something true." I posted the video to my new, professional Instagram account and my nascent website, with the full recipe listed below. The response was immediate. It was shared by food bloggers, by other designers, by architects. They called it soothing, powerful, elegant. My story was no longer about a family dispute. It was about craft, precision, and resilience. Within a week, I had 3 new inquiries from small, high-end restaurant groups. My instability narrative, the one Cassandra's PR team was pushing, was being drowned out by my own competence. June delivered the final piece of my financial armor. I have a friend, she said over coffee. She's on the board of the Birch and Stone Hotel Group. They're rebranding. They need a lead architect for their entire 20-hotel portfolio. They want someone new, someone with a clear vision. I sent them your Althea project and your new video. They want to meet. Tomorrow. The meeting was a success. The Birch and Stone contract was a 2-year commitment, enough to establish Ward Atelier as a serious player. I had not just survived my father's threat. I had used it as fuel to become independent of his world entirely. Cassandra's response was predictable and petty. A comment appeared on the Foundation's public social media page, a saccharine post about the importance of family traditions, and under it, a comment from a local volunteer that was clearly her voice. It's so sad when people exploit family recipes for their own gain. That pecan pie was Leah's grandmother's, and she's passing it off as her own. I read the comment. I felt the familiar, dull sting of her jealousy. My old self would have been enraged, would have fired off a response defending my recipe's origins. The new me simply archived the comment. Then, on my own professional feed, I posted a detailed case study of the Althea project, complete with blueprints, lighting grids, and the glowing press from the Calder Prize. I responded to her whispers with a verifiable shout of my success. That evening, Aria Bell called. "The Winter Gala," she said, her voice all business. "It's their biggest event of the year. 3 weeks from today. All their major donors will be in one room. If you want to make a move, that's the place." "I can't go," I said. "The TRO is in place. She'd have me arrested for getting within 500 feet of her." "You can't," Aria agreed. "But your pie can." The plan formed quickly, beautifully. Riley, her bakery, the Gilded Crust, was one of the most respected businesses in the city. Her record was spotless. "Riley," I said, dialing her immediately, "how would you feel about donating dessert to the Hale Foundation Winter Gala?" There was a pause. "I would," she said slowly, "feel that it was my civic duty, as a business owner, of course." "The Gilded Crust will sponsor the entire dessert station," I said, pacing my apartment. "A gesture of community goodwill." "And I," Riley added, catching on instantly, "will be so busy that I'll need an event designer to help me stage it. Someone with, say, an architectural background. I would design the station. It would be beautiful, elegant, and branded with the Gilded Crust's logo. And on every small, tasteful card, next to each dessert, there would be a QR code. The sign would read, 'A recipe for transparency. Scan here for our famous pecan pie recipe and to learn more about our community partners.'" "Aria's report," I said, the plan locking into place. "The link will go to a password-protected page on a new, anonymous domain." "No," Theo said, looking up from his laptop. "A password is a barrier. It needs to be immediate. The link will go to a live public-facing website, but the website will be a simple redirect." I understood. The QR code will point to a simple page that, for the first few hours of the gala, redirects to Riley's pie recipe. Then, at a specific time, you change the redirect. You change it to Aria's report. 8 p.m., Theo said, right when Cassandra gets on stage to make her big appeal for money. The website was built in a day. It was clean, brutal, and simple. The Hale Foundation, a transparency report. It featured the bank statements, the Northlake Incorporation papers, Sloane's signature next to Cassandra's, the low program spending, the testimony from the Maple Hollow Hospital, and embedded at the top, the 30-second video of Cassandra directing the staged gift-giving, yelling at volunteers to look grateful. We were building a bomb. A week before the gala, a text message lit up my phone. It was from an unknown number. "Leah, it's Sloane. Please don't use this number." My heart hammered. I wrote back, "Are you safe?" "No. Listen, I have to show you something. Proof. Mom is... She's not just taking money. She's moving it. I have the other bank records. I'm scared." "Where are you?" I texted. "We can meet." "My coffee shop. 10 minutes." I grabbed my keys. But before I reached the door, another text came through. Can't. She knows I'm out. She's checking my phone. Forget I texted. I'm sorry. Don't contact me. The texts vanished. She had deleted them. I sat back down, the keys heavy in my hand. Sloane wasn't just a cutout. She was a hostage, and she was the signatory on the Northlake account. When this bomb went off, the shrapnel would hit her first. I called Francine. We have a problem. The gala plan is good, but it's going to incinerate Sloane. We have to pivot. The goal is not to burn everyone, Leah, Francine said. The goal is justice for you and accountability for Cassandra. We have to frame the narrative. Sloane is a victim of coercion. We need to make that clear. The plan was adjusted. The transparency report would now include a section on financial coercion, redacting Sloane's name where possible, framing her as a young family member, used as a shield. The goal was to protect my sister, if I could. That week, Ward Atelier made its first official announcement. We were launching a new bespoke collection of kitchen and dining spaces, available for private commission. We called it The Kitchen is Safe. The metaphor was clear, and it was not subtle. It was a statement of principles. The press release talked about creating spaces free of conflict, designing boundaries, and the kitchen as the heart of the home, not a stage for trauma. The story, combined with my popular recipe video, was picked up by design blogs and local news. They loved it. They interviewed me about my design philosophy. In one interview, a lifestyle writer called me the architect of boundaries. The name stuck. The narrative was now completely mine. Cassandra was no longer attacking an unstable daughter. She was attacking the architect of boundaries. It was a fight she was about to lose, publicly. The ballroom of the Westbridge Grand was a sea of sequins and black ties, a monument to Cassandra's ego. The lighting was a warm, forgiving gold. The centerpieces were aggressively large, and the air hummed with the sound of 1,000 hollow conversations. Cassandra herself was the room's gravitational center. She wore a floor-length gown of metallic gold sequins, a dress that didn't just catch the light, it weaponized it. My father, Richard, stood beside her, a handsome, empty suit, his hand on her back, playing his role as the supportive consort. I was there, legally. Francine had made it a point of steel. I was present as a registered vendor, an employee of the Gilded Crust Patisserie. My name was on the staff list as L. Ward, event designer. Francine had sent a blistering preemptive letter to Cassandra's legal team, informing them that I would be confined to the 10 by 10 foot footprint of the dessert station and that the terms of the emergency restraining order were in full effect. If Cassandra or Richard came within 100 yards of me, they would be in immediate violation. It was a trap, and I was the bait. Riley was a fortress of professionalism, directing her staff, her white chef's coat immaculate. My job had been to design the station itself. I had made it beautiful, of course, shelves of dark, reclaimed wood, delicate uplighting on each pastry, and a backdrop of living moss. It was a piece of my work, a physical manifestation of Ward Atelier's philosophy, sitting directly in her stronghold. Scattered through the audience, blending perfectly, were my allies. Francine sat at a corporate table near the front, looking every inch the high-powered donor, her eyes missing nothing. Aria Bell, the investigative reporter, was at the back bar, nursing a club soda, her notebook concealed. Theo was not in the room. He was in my apartment, his fingers poised over his laptop, watching the gala's live stream, waiting for his cue. The evening dragged on. Speeches were made. Awards were given to people for giving money to Cassandra. Finally, she took the stage, her sequined dress shimmering under the spotlight. The room fell into a reverent hush. Thank you, she said, her voice a warm, cultured broadcast. You know, when we started the Hale Foundation, we had one simple mission: to give back, to take responsibility for our community, because community is what holds us together. I watched her on the monitor Riley had set up behind the dessert station. My stomach was a cold, hard knot. I saw her assistant move to the side of the stage, handing a man, the event manager, a thick white envelope, a cash payment, a bonus. I scanned the crowd and found Sloane. She was at a table near the back, seated with junior staff. She was picking at the label of her water bottle, her head down, refusing to look at the stage. She looked trapped, her shoulders hunched. She knew what this was. On stage, Cassandra was reaching her crescendo. "It's not about what we have," she declared, placing a perfectly manicured hand on her heart. "It's about what we give. Tonight, I ask you to join me in giving hope to those who have none, to join me in building a better, stronger, more compassionate Maple Hollow." She paused, beaming, soaking in the applause. She picked up a delicate silver spoon and a crystal champagne flute. This was it. She tapped the spoon against the glass. Ting, ting, ting. The sound was crisp, clear, and commanding, the signal for the pledge drive. "Now," she said, her smile worth $1 million. "Let us show our community what we are made of." Behind the dessert station, my phone buzzed with a text from Theo. "Redirect is live. Good luck." At that exact moment, the dessert station officially opened. A small, polite line formed. The first guest, a woman in a diamond necklace, pointed at a miniature cheesecake. "That looks divine," she said. The small, tasteful sign next to the cheesecakes read, "The Gilded Crust, Lemon Ricotta Minis," and beneath it, a recipe for transparency. Scan here for this recipe and to learn more about our community partners. The woman pulled out her phone. She scanned the code. I watched her face. Her polite smile faltered. She frowned, confused, and tapped the screen. She leaned in, reading. Her eyes widened. She grabbed her husband's arm. "Arthur," she whispered, her voice sharp. "Look at this." A second person scanned. A third. It was a silent, digital infection. The QR code was not leading to a recipe for cheesecake. It was leading to Aria Bell's fully sourced, evidence-packed, notarized report on the Hale Foundation. It was all there. The shell company, Northlake Consulting, the bank statements, the check signed by Sloane Hale, the PSO box authorization, co-signed by Cassandra, the abysmal 30% program spending, the sworn affidavit from the director of Maple Hollow General, detailing the phantom donation of pediatric beds. And at the very top, the 30-second behind-the-scenes video. I heard the first gasp. A man at the front of the room, the head of the bank sponsoring the event, was staring at his phone, his face pale. He was the same man from the hospital's faked press conference. He stood up, knocking his chair back. "What is this?" he boomed, his voice cutting through the room. Cassandra, still smiling on stage, looked confused. "Mr. Davies, is there a problem?" "I'll say there's a problem," he shouted, holding his phone aloft. "I am looking at bank statements. I am looking at a video of you staging a donation. Our pledge tonight, the Birch Davies Bank pledge of $200,000, is immediately and indefinitely rescinded." The room exploded. My father, in a panic, grabbed the microphone. There seems to be a misunderstanding. Our systems have been hacked. This is a malicious attack. This is slander." From the back bar, Aria Bell's voice sliced through his. "Is this a hack, Mr. Hale?" She walked forward, holding up a single, laminated piece of paper. "This is a notarized copy of the P.O. Box authorization for Northlake Consulting, the shell company that received $400,000 from your foundation last year. The primary signature is Cassandra Hale's. Is this your signature, Mrs. Hale?" Cassandra's face was a mask of pure white fury. Her eyes scanned the room, looking for the source of the attack. And then she saw me, standing behind the dessert station, my hands folded, my gaze level. She forgot the donors. She forgot the restraining order. She forgot her entire performance. All she saw was me, the architect of her ruin. "You!" she screamed, a raw, guttural sound that was nothing like her polished gala voice. "You did this, you little bitch!" She gathered her sequined dress and lunged off the stage. Her nails curled into claws, making a direct line for me. I didn't flinch. She never made it. 2 private security guards, hired by Francine, not the venue, intercepted her before she had crossed 10 feet. They grabbed her by the arms. "Ma'am, you need to calm down," one said, his voice firm. Cassandra thrashed, a grotesque parody of her earlier elegance. "Get your hands off me! I want her arrested!" "Ma'am," the second guard said, his voice loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear, "you are in direct violation of a court-issued restraining order. You must stay 100 yards from Ms. Ward. You are the one breaking the law." A fresh wave of shock rolled through the room. The assault was now public record. My grandmother, Evelyn, stood up from her table. She looked at Cassandra, then at my father, her face a canvas of profound, bottomless disappointment. She said nothing. She simply turned and walked out of the ballroom. My father stood frozen on the stage, a pathetic, silent statue. In the chaos, I saw Sloane move. She was shaking, clutching her purse. She darted from her table, not toward her mother, but toward Francine. "I have it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I was forced. She made me sign everything. I have the real ledgers. I have a hard drive. I'll testify. Please, I have proof." Francine put a protective hand on her arm, guiding her toward Aria. As Cassandra shrieked about lawyers and lawsuits, 2 uniformed officers from the Maple Hollow Police Department entered the ballroom, not with sirens, but with a quiet, administrative authority. They had been alerted by Francine an hour prior, the moment the evidence of financial crimes was presented to her. They walked past the stunned donors, past the melting desserts, and approached my father and Cassandra's personal assistant, who was still holding the list of pledges. "Sir, ma'am," the lead officer said, his voice polite but unyielding, "we have a warrant to seize all financial records, computers, and communications related to the Hale Foundation and Northlake Consulting, pending a criminal investigation into financial malfeasance." The room was no longer a party. It was a crime scene. The beautiful, shimmering facade had been ripped away, and the rot underneath was exposed to the light, the glamorous gala. Cassandra's masterpiece had shattered like a sheet of cheap sugar glass. The gala's implosion was the earthquake. The days that followed were the aftershocks, a series of structural failures that brought the entire Hale edifice crashing down. By Monday morning, the State Attorney General's office had issued a formal press release, a dry, administrative document that was more devastating than any tabloid headline. It confirmed an active investigation into the Hale Foundation for financial irregularities and potential malfeasance, citing the evidence of a shell corporation and credible allegations of donor fraud. The search warrant executed at the gala was now public record. The Westbridge Herald, the main local paper, ran the story above the fold. The headline was simple and brutal: "Gala Chaos. Donors Flee Amid Fraud Allegations." The article detailed the scene, from the QR code insurgency to the volatile confrontation that led to Cassandra being restrained by security. My name was there, identified as the architect, the stepdaughter, and the subject of the restraining order. My father's team made one last attempt to contain the blast. Francine received a call from Richard's civil lawyer. They offered a quiet settlement. The terms were a testament to their delusion. They proposed a significant 6-figure sum, contingent on my signing an ironclad, permanent non-disclosure agreement. It stipulated that I must drop the restraining order, retract all statements, and publicly support a narrative that the gala incident was a malicious hack by an unknown third party. It was a checkbook, a gag order, and a demand that I lie for them. "My refusal is absolute," I told Francine. "Tell them the time for quiet settlements ended when she put her hands on me. We proceed." Francine later told me that when she delivered the refusal, Richard's lawyer was silent for a full 10 seconds, utterly blindsided. They had genuinely believed money was the one tool that could still fix this. The following week, we had the hearing for the permanent restraining order. This was not the criminal case. It was my civil action. The small courtroom was tense. Cassandra was there, looking diminished. She was dressed in a painfully subdued navy suit, her face pale and arranged into a mask of wronged innocence. Her lawyer argued that I was vindictive and emotionally unstable, that I was lashing out after the unfortunate but necessary dissolution of my role at Ridge and Harbor. Then, Francine submitted my evidence. She played the video from the brooch. The courtroom was silent. The air sucked out of it. All you could hear was the clear, high-definition audio. Cassandra's hissed, "This is not your showroom." The sharp, ugly crack of her palm connecting with my face, the shattering of the ceramic pie dish, and finally, my father's weak, pathetic plea, "Let's not make a scene." Cassandra faltered. She physically recoiled, as if seeing it for the first time. "She provoked me," she whispered, loud enough for the judge to hear. She edited that. She trapped me." The judge looked up from the monitor, his expression cold. "Mrs. Hale, the only trap I see is the one you laid for yourself. The evidence is unambiguous." The restraining order was made permanent. He granted Francine's request to expand its terms. Cassandra was now legally barred from coming within 500 feet of me, my apartment, and my new place of business, Ward Atelier. Her lawyer protested, claiming this would impede her vital community functions. The judge was unmoved. "Then she must adjust her functions," he said. Cassandra's answer to this legal defeat was to escalate her smear campaign. She was hemorrhaging support, so she became desperate. Two of my clients, the new ones who had signed with Ward Atelier after the Birch and Stone contract, called me, distressed. They had received anonymous, typed letters. The letters were identical, describing me as erratic, litigious, and suffering from a severe personality disorder. They warned the clients that their projects would be mired in my personal vendettas. It was a clumsy, desperate move. Francine's investigator traced the envelopes back to a bulk mail account at a copy shop in Westbridge. The account, it turned out, was paid for by the Hale Foundation's public relations firm. We now had a direct, actionable link. Cassandra was using nonprofit funds to actively sabotage my business. It was tortious interference. This final, stupid act of aggression was the green light for Aria Bell. Aria's full investigative report went live on a major national news portal. The Transparency Report website had been the appetizer. This was the full, devastating meal. The headline was, "The House of Hale, a case study in philanthropic fraud." Aria's article was a forensic masterpiece. It contained screenshots of the bank transfers. It had the Northlake Incorporation documents, but most importantly, it had a side-by-side, high-resolution comparison of two signatures, Sloane's name on the Northlake documents and Cassandra's signature on the PMO box authorization form. A forensic handwriting expert had confirmed the signatures authorizing Cassandra's access to the mailbox were a conclusive match to her signature on other public foundation documents. Northlake was now, publicly and irrefutably, Cassandra's personal slush fund. The article triggered the next, most serious cascade. With the public evidence tying Cassandra directly to the shell company, the Attorney General moved on my father. He was not just the silent husband, he was the co-chair of the foundation. His signature was on the official tax filings that fraudulently claimed hundreds of thousands of dollars in consulting fees to Northlake. He was either a co-conspirator or criminally negligent. The state prosecutor's office filed an emergency motion. A judge issued an immediate freeze on all Hale family assets, including all foundation accounts, Northlake's account, and Richard and Cassandra's personal portfolios, pending a full criminal investigation. The money, their source of power, was gone. The freeze is what finally broke Sloane free. She showed up at my apartment door 2 days later, unannounced, her hair plastered to her face from the rain. She was clutching a laptop bag as if it were a life raft. She looked terrified, but she was there. "They're done," she whispered, her teeth chattering. They can't pay the lawyers. The accounts are frozen. They're done." I pulled her inside, sat her down, and wrapped her in a blanket. "What's in the bag, Sloan?" She unzipped it and pulled out a slim external hard drive. "It's the real ledger," she said, her voice cracking. She made me keep 2 sets, one for the accountant, and one. She called it the Shadow Ledger. It shows where the money from Northlake actually went. "Where did it go?" I asked gently. "Everywhere," Sloan choked out. "Her clothes, her car, the down payment on the decorator for the gala, thousands of dollars to that PR firm. She made me do it, Leah. She told me it was just for tax efficiency. She had me sign the papers when I turned 18. I didn't even know what Northlake was. I'll be a witness. I'll tell them everything. I'm so scared." She was sobbing now, a deep, ragged sound. The old dynamic was gone. This wasn't my rival. This was another victim. I put my hand over hers, holding the hard drive. "Sloan, you need safety, and you need your own representation. Someone who works only for you." I picked up my phone and called Francine. "I have Sloan, and she has the final piece of the puzzle." "She's a material witness," Francine said, her voice all business. "Don't let her leave. I am arranging for a criminal defense attorney to meet her at my office in 1 hour. We are going to take her directly to the DA to file for formal witness status and immunity." I knelt in front of my sister. "You did the right thing. You are going to be safe. I've got you." The rest of the house of cards fell. A handwritten letter arrived from my grandmother. Evelyn. Her cursive was shaky. "Leah, I am sorry. My silence for all these years was a sin of cowardice. I watched her poison my son and attack my granddaughter, and I chose peace over honor. I am ashamed. I will be making a full statement to the Attorney General in your support." Cassandra, cornered and with no money or PR team, made one last, desperate move. She started a live stream from her marble kitchen, the scene of the assault. It was a grotesque performance. Her face was puffy, her hair unkempt. She tried to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. She rambled about a jealous, vindictive stepdaughter who was unstable and obsessed with money. The narrative, however, was no longer hers to control. The comment section flooded with unified scorn. "Where's the hospital money, Cassandra? Justice for Leah. Your signature is on the P.O. box. The architect of boundaries is building you a cage." She stared at the screen, her mask of grief turning to a snarl of pure rage, and abruptly ended the feed. The final blows were administrative. The Birch Davies Bank, the donor who had rescinded his pledge at the gala, filed a class action civil suit on behalf of more than a dozen major donors, demanding a full reimbursement of all donations from the past 3 years, citing fraudulent misrepresentation. Then, Francine called me with the last piece of news. "The district attorney's office is convening a grand jury," she said, her voice steady. "They are officially considering criminal charges against Cassandra Hale for embezzlement, wire fraud, and coercion, and Leah. They are considering charges against your father for complicity and felony tax fraud." The fallout from the gala was not just destructive, it was clarifying. It was a controlled demolition that had cleared the unstable, rotten structure, leaving a site ready for new construction. The work of building Ward Atelier was the concrete, the foundation. It began immediately. The anonymous letter to my client did cost me 1 contract. The client, a nervous restaurateur, called and said he needed to avoid the drama. I let him go without a fight. His departure, however, created a vacuum that was almost instantly filled. The architect of boundaries story, coupled with Arya's explosive report, had an unintended side effect. My transparency had made me a commodity. I received 3 new inquiries in a single week. One was from a nonprofit dedicated to building safe houses for women, asking me to design their new intake and counseling center. The other 2 were from high-profile female chefs who told me, in no uncertain terms, that they wanted to work with an architect who understood, as one put it, what it means to build a fortress. My supposed instability had been reframed by the public as courage. The anchor of it all was the Birch and Stone contract, Ward Atelier officially launched not with a quiet email, but with a press release announcing the multi-year 20-hotel redesign project. It was a massive, unassailable contract that cemented my new firm's legitimacy. I was no longer just Leah Ward, the architect from Ridge and Harbor. I was the founder and principal of my own studio. With the first draw from that new contract, I didn't buy a new car or a new wardrobe. I renovated the kitchen at my cabin at Pinecrest Ridge. The kitchen there had been small, functional. I tore it down to the studs. I redesigned it as my pecan sanctuary, where Cassandra's kitchen was cold, white, imported marble built for an audience. Mine was warm. I used reclaimed hickory for the cabinets, soapstone for the counters, a material that is honest, that patinas and shows its use over time. I installed a commercial-grade oven. The new, oversized island was made of a single, solid slab of walnut, designed not for performing, but for working. It was a space built for craft, not for conflict. The reconstruction of my family, what little was left of it, was a more delicate process. It required steel reinforcements and healthy, unbreachable boundaries. Sloane took the apartment I found for her, a small one-bedroom in a safe, anonymous building in Westbridge, far from Maple Hollow. I paid the deposit and the first 6 months' rent. I gave her a prepaid credit card for groceries. This was unconditional support. But I also established the boundaries. I will support your safety and your transition. Sloane, I told her, sitting on the floor of her empty new living room, I will not support a return to your old life. I will not give you money for anything other than necessities. This is your chance to build something of your own, your own. She was terrified, but for the first time, she was clear-eyed. I'm applying for a job, she said, her voice small, at a coffee shop, and I'm re-enrolling in community college for the spring. I want to be a paralegal. That's a good plan, I said. It was a start, a piling driven into bedrock. My father tried to bypass the boundaries. A text came through from an unknown number. Leah, this is your father. I know you hate me. I deserve it. But I am begging you. Call me. We have to talk. Don't let this happen. I screenshotted the text and sent it to Francine. I replied to his number with a single, copied and pasted sentence. All communication must be directed to my legal counsel. He did not text again. With my professional life secure, Francine began work on the civil suit. This was separate from the state's criminal case. This was mine. We are filing on 3 counts, she explained, ticking them off on her fingers. Count 1, assault and battery. Based on the Thanksgiving attack, the video and medical reports make this airtight. Count 2, defamation. Based on the initial unstable whispers and the subsequent stolen recipe comments. Count 3, tortious interference with business. This is the big one. The anonymous letters to your clients, which we have traced back to her PR firm paid for by foundation funds, were a direct and malicious attempt to destroy your livelihood. The goal was not just to punish, it was to build a permanent legal firewall. Aria Bell called me with an update on the state's case. It's official, she said, her voice brisk. The grand jury has indicted. The district attorney is moving the file from investigation to criminal prosecution. Cassandra is being charged with 2 counts of felony wire fraud and 1 count of embezzlement. Your father is being charged with felony tax fraud and criminal conspiracy. The words were heavy, final. This was no longer a family dispute. It was a criminal proceeding. My own healing ran on a parallel track. I couldn't just build a legal fortress. I had to rebuild my own interior. I started attending a domestic violence recovery workshop. It was in a church basement, anonymous, and filled with women whose stories made mine seem small. I sat in the back and just listened for 3 weeks. On the 4th week, I spoke. I told my story, not with names, but with the facts, the pie, the slap, the gaslighting, the attempt to destroy my job. When I finished, a woman across the circle, a woman with a scar on her own cheek, looked at me and nodded. You're in the right place, she said. June continued to work on my wrist, which still ached in the cold. The physical therapy was practical, but it was also psychological. "You're rebuilding strength, Leah," she said, pressing into the muscle. "We're adding this session to your medical file for the civil suit. Every visit is a data point. Your pain is part of the evidence." Riley, whose bakery was now so famous she had a 6-week waiting list, started a monthly baking class. She asked me to be her first guest speaker. I stood in front of 20 people, in her warm, flower-dusted shop. I didn't talk about the assault. I talked about the kitchen is safe. I talked about kitchen design as an act of love, and how to create spaces that encourage collaboration, not conflict, how islands can be bridges, not barriers. Theo, in his own way, paid tribute. He opened a photo exhibition at a small gallery in Westbridge. He called it Cracks in the Marble. It was a series of 20 macro-lens photographs, an almost invisible hairline fracture in a marble countertop, a single, dark drop of oil on a pristine white floor, a dead fly on the sill of a grand, gold-leafed window. It was his visual metaphor for the polished, perfect Hale family, and the critics called it a stunning, subtle work of domestic horror. The package from my grandmother arrived on a rainy Tuesday. It was a small, heavy box. Inside, there was no letter, just a tarnished, silver recipe box. I opened it. It was filled with handwritten cards. I recognized the elegant, looping script instantly, from the few letters I had left. It was my mother's handwriting, my biological mother, who had died when I was 3. I flipped through the cards. Lemon icebox tarts, Sunday pot roast, sourdough starter. And then I found it. The last card in the box, bourbon caramel pecan pie. It was my recipe, the one I thought I had invented, the one I had spent years perfecting. I had been working from a ghost, a sense memory of a taste and a smell from a life I couldn't even remember. This was it. This was the source. This was the recipe of the woman Richard had loved before Cassandra. This was the taste Cassandra had been trying to eradicate, her jealousy, her rage. It wasn't about my success. It was about my very existence, a reminder that she was not the original. The pie had never been a gift. It had been an echo, and she had tried to silence it. I closed the box. I knew what I had to do. I sat with Francine for hours, practicing my testimony for the upcoming civil trial. She was relentless. "She will say you were jealous of her. My work speaks for itself. The Calder Prize, the Birch and Stone contract. My success is not a reaction to her. It is a fact. She will say you are unstable." I filed a police report. I sought medical treatment. I established a new, successful business. My actions are those of a stable, rational person protecting herself. She will say you provoked her. I brought a dessert to Thanksgiving. That is not a provocation. That is a tradition. The only provocation was her hand on my face. My voice was calm. I felt no rage, no desire for vengeance, only the cold, clean desire for the truth to be entered into the public record. The public, for their part, had already made their decision. The narrative of the vindictive daughter had died. The architect of boundaries was the story that had survived. I received emails from strangers, other women who had their own Cassandra in their lives. I had, without intending to, become a symbol. Cassandra's new lawyer, a public defender assigned after her assets were frozen, made one last, desperate attempt at psychological warfare. He sent Francine a letter, threatening a countersuit for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Francine laughed when she read it to me. "It's a Hail Mary. Leah, it's the last, dying gasp of a bully who has no cards left to play. They are trying to scare you into settling before the trial." "Tell him," I said, looking at my mother's recipe box on my desk, "that I will see him in court." The room was offensively neutral, beige walls, a polished fake wood table, and fluorescent lights that buzzed at a frequency just high enough to set your teeth on edge. The air was stale, thick with the unsaid. This was mediation. This was the system's attempt to avoid the mess of a public trial. Francine sat beside me, her files arranged in 3 precise, thin stacks. Across the table sat Cassandra, her public defender, a harried-looking man named Graves, and my father, Richard. They wanted a deal. Their agenda was clear. A non-disclosure agreement so vast it would essentially erase my voice, and a complete, public withdrawal of my civil suit. They wanted me to disappear, and they wanted me to sign the paper that made my disappearance my own idea. Richard, predictably, was the chosen instrument of this manipulation. He leaned forward, his face arranged in the familiar mask of paternal concern, a look I had once mistaken for love. "Leah," he began, his voice a low, reasonable murmur. "This has gone on long enough, this pain. It's destroying what's left of our family. We're here to heal." I looked at him, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. It was the detached assessment of an architect looking at a blueprint with a fatal, unfixable structural flaw. The foundation was corrupt. The load-bearing walls were compromised. The only responsible act was demolition. "Your father is right," Graves said, picking up the cue. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "We are prepared to offer a settlement, a compensation of $25,000, to cover any inconvenience." Francine and I both looked at the number. It was an insult. It was less than the cost of the lighting fixtures I'd specified for the birch and stone project. Graves wasn't finished. "This offer is, of course, contingent on 2 small items. First, the immediate dismissal of your civil suit. Second, a brief, joint public statement, a letter, really, in which you apologize for the misunderstanding at the gala and the subsequent escalation." I stared at him. "An apology? From me?" "You want me," I said, my voice flat, "to apologize for being assaulted." "It's a reconciliation document, Ms. Ward," Graves said smoothly. "It's about mutual closure. It acknowledges the high emotions on both sides." "High emotions," I repeated. Francine opened her laptop. She didn't say a word. She simply turned the screen toward the mediator, a neutral woman at the head of the table, and pressed play. She didn't play the whole video, just the 8 seconds that mattered. The audio in the sterile room was brutal. First, Cassandra's hissed voice. "This is not your showroom." Then, my level response. "I told Evelyn I would." And then, the sound. The wet, sharp crack of her palm hitting my face. It was sickeningly loud. It was followed by the shattering of the ceramic dish. The mediator flinched. Richard closed his eyes. Cassandra stared at a fixed point on the beige wall. "That," I said to the mediator, "is the high emotion on one side. Mine was the sound of a pie dish breaking." I nodded to Francine. The psychological warfare had begun. Francine slid the first of her thin files across the table. "That video, Mr. Graves, is Exhibit A in our assault and battery claim. Now, let's discuss the tortious interference." She laid out the evidence like an architect presenting a final design. Exhibit B, the PO, box authorization for Northlake Consulting, signed by Mrs. Hale, linking her directly to the shell company. Exhibit C, the bank statements showing the monthly transfers from the foundation to Northlake. Exhibit D, the preliminary, sworn testimony of Sloane Hale, stating she was coerced into acting as a signatory and kept a shadow ledger of off-book payments. Francine leaned forward, her voice dropping. And Exhibit E, the invoices from the public relations firm, paid by Northlake, confirming they were hired to, and I quote, "manage the narrative surrounding Ms. Ward. This includes the anonymous letters sent to her clients, which constitute a direct, malicious attempt to destroy her new business." Richard's face had gone pale. Graves was shuffling his papers, his smooth facade cracking. He was a public defender. He was here to manage a simple assault case, and Francine had just presented him with a binder proving a complex criminal conspiracy. He had brought a knife to a cannon fight. He looked at Cassandra and my father. "We need to discuss this," he whispered, gesturing to the mediator. A 5-minute recess. Before you go, I said, speaking for the second time, let's be clear about my position. You seem to think this is about money. This is about accountability. You, Cassandra, hit me. And you, I said, turning to my father, watched, and then you both conspired to ruin my life to cover it up. There is no dollar amount that makes that go away. There is no NDA that can buy my silence. This mediation is a courtesy. The trial is the destination. Graves looked at Cassandra. This will be a public trial. All of this. The bank records, the video of the slap. It will all be presented to a jury. You will lose, and the judgment will be catastrophic. That was the word. The trigger. The pin pulled from the grenade. Cassandra, who had been vibrating with a silent, compressed rage, finally snapped, her mask of subdued victimhood shattered. "You will not," she hissed, her voice a low, vicious snarl. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You ungrateful little creature, after everything I did, everything I gave this family, you will be ruined. You think you're safe? You think your little clients will stick with you? I will burn down everything you build. I will spend the rest of my life making people see what you are." The room was dead silent. My father, realizing what she was doing, tried to put his hand on her arm. "Cassandra, no." "Get off me, Richard," she shrieked, batting his hand away. "She wants a war. She will get one. I will see you in the gutter. Leah, do you hear me? The gutter." The mediator raised her hand. "Mrs. Hale, I must remind you that this is a formal mediation. Your words are being recorded." Cassandra froze. Her eyes darted to the small, discreet microphone on the table, its small red light glowing. She realized, too late, that her entire threat, her promise to spend the rest of her life trying to ruin me, was now on the record. It was a direct, recorded admission of malicious intent. She sank back into her chair. The fight was gone, replaced by the cold, white panic of total self-destruction. Graves rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked exhausted. He looked at Francine. "A new offer, now." They left the room. 20 minutes later, they returned. Richard looked broken. Cassandra was staring at her hands. Graves placed a new paper on the table. "A significant 6-figure compensation," he said, naming a number that was, indeed, substantial. "A full, public letter of apology, drafted by your counsel, to be signed by Mrs. Hale. A complete and permanent withdrawal from all remaining foundation-related activities for both Mr. and Mrs. Hale." It was a total surrender. They were offering me everything: the money, the apology, their abdication. I looked at the paper, then I looked at Francine, then I looked at the mediator. "No," I said. Cassandra's head snapped up. Richard looked at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. Even Francine looked surprised. "Leah," my father whispered, "this is everything you wanted." "No," I said again, my voice clear and calm in the dead, fluorescent room. "This is money. This is a gag order. This is a quiet deal in a beige room, and it lets you both hide. I am not interested in a settlement. I need the light. I need a public record. I need a jury of 12 strangers to hear the evidence and render a judgment, in the light. I need the truth to be official." I turned to the mediator. "This mediation has failed. We are done here." The failure was logged. The machine of justice, which they had tried to divert, clanked back into motion. 2 days later, the official notice was posted. The civil trial of Ward V's. Hale and Hale was set. The date was scheduled for the week of Thanksgiving, almost 1 year to the day since the assault. The subpoenas went out immediately. Aria Bell received hers. A formal summons to testify regarding her investigation and the evidence of the smear campaign. The Birch Davies Bank, the lead plaintiff in the donor lawsuit, issued a press statement declaring their intention to cooperate fully and make their own executives available as witnesses against the Hales. The house of cards was no longer just falling. It was being meticulously disassembled and entered into evidence. I saw them once more, leaving the courthouse after a preliminary scheduling hearing. My father's hands were shaking so badly he couldn't sign his own document. Cassandra, her face a rigid mask, attempted a smile for a lone news photographer, but it was a mechanical, terrifying grimace, the smile of a skull. That night, I drove to the cabin. The new kitchen at Pinecrest Ridge was finished. The soapstone counters cool and solid beneath my hands. The air smelled of walnut and pine, not of stale coffee and fear. I stood by the new, oversized window, looking out at the dark, quiet lake. I began to rehearse my closing statement. There was no anger in it, no hatred, no talk of revenge. My statement was about the truth. It was about the facts. It was about the precise architectural language of boundaries. I spoke of the right to safety, the right to one's own work, and the consequences of violating those borders. My phone rang. It was Evelyn, my grandmother. "I heard the mediation failed," she said. Her voice was no longer thin, but steady. "It did," I said, watching my reflection in the dark glass. There was a long pause. "Good," she said, with a surprising firmness. "Your mother, my first daughter-in-law, she would have been so proud. You have her spine. Leah, you have her steel. Let them see it." She took a breath, and I could hear the history in it. "You have done all the work. Now, just stand back and let the truth do its job." The morning of the trial, a light snow was falling, dusting the steps of the county courthouse like a fine coating of powdered sugar. The courtroom was packed. It was a standing-room-only performance. The audience a mix of local press, former donors, and legal students. Aria Bell was in the back, notebook open. Francine sat beside me, a picture of calm, structural integrity. Across the aisle, they looked small, Cassandra and Richard Hale, once the untouchable royalty of Maple Hollow, were now just two defendants at a civil trial, their assets frozen, their reputations in cinders. The criminal charges loomed over them, but today was my day. This was my case. Francine's opening argument was a masterpiece of architectural precision. She was not telling a story. She was presenting a structural analysis of a collapse. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice resonating in the quiet room. "This is a case about boundaries. It is about the boundary of the skin, and what happens when that is violently crossed. It is about the boundary of a career, and what happens when that is maliciously attacked. And it is about the boundary of the law, and what happens when two people believe they are so far above it, they can no longer even see it." She laid out the three pillars of our case: the assault, the defamation, and the tortious interference. But she masterfully wove in the evidence from the looming criminal case, the fraud, the shell company, the coercion, painting a picture not of a simple family dispute, but of a pattern of calculated narcissistic control. Then, she dimmed the lights. "Exhibit A," she said. The large monitors in the courtroom flickered to life. My brooch, my camera. The audio was pristine. Cassandra's hiss, my own calm voice, and then the sound, the sharp, wet crack of her palm connecting with my face. It echoed in the dead silent courtroom, a sound so ugly and unambiguous it was like a confession in itself. The jury flinched. One juror, a woman in the front row, put her hand to her own mouth. Cassandra stared at the screen, her face white. Richard looked down at his hands. The sound of the ceramic pie dish shattering was almost a relief. The room was still, the air thick with the afterburn of the impact. Francine let the silence hang for a full 10 seconds before she spoke. "The kitchen," she said quietly, "was, as they say, on fire. The defense's case was built on sand. Cassandra's lawyer, Graves, tried to argue self-defense. Ms. Ward has a history of instability, he argued. She was volatile. My client felt threatened. She was protecting her home, her family." "Threatened?" Francine countered on rebuttal. "You all saw the video. Ms. Ward was holding a pie. She did not move. She did not raise her voice. The only threat in that kitchen was the woman who used her hands as a weapon. The witnesses were devastating. First, my grandmother. Evelyn walked to the stand slowly, but her voice was clear. "Mrs. Hale?" Francine asked. "You were in the kitchen that day. What did you see?" Evelyn looked directly at the jury. "I saw my daughter-in-law, Cassandra, strike my granddaughter, Leah. I saw her hit her across the face. Hard." Graves tried to discredit her. "You're an old woman. Isn't it true you've had issues with Cassandra for years?" "This is just family animosity." Evelyn's gaze turned to steel. "I have been silent for 20 years. Sir, I have chosen quiet over truth. I was wrong. I sat by while my son and his wife cultivated an illusion. But that day, I saw an act of violence. I am silent no longer. Today, I choose to speak." Then, Sloane. She was granted immunity in the civil case in exchange for her testimony. She presented the hard drive. "The shadow ledger," she explained, in a small, trembling voice, how Cassandra had made her sign the Northlake Incorporation papers when she was 19. "I didn't know," she whispered, looking at the jury. "She told me it was just tax paperwork. She told me what to sign, and I signed it. When I found the real ledger, I was terrified. She was moving money. She was using me." She looked at Cassandra. "She controlled my phone, my bank account, my entire life. I was her signatory, but I was also her hostage." Finally, it was my turn. I took the stand. I was not nervous. I was just there to present the final blueprint. Graves tried to paint me as jealous, unstable, a scorned daughter obsessed with revenge. "Isn't it true, Ms. Ward," he sneered, "that you were jealous of your stepmother's success? That you orchestrated this entire, elaborate takedown, right down to the QR code, to destroy her?" I looked at him calmly. "My success is not in question. I am the founder of my own studio. I hold the Birch and Stone contract. I won the Calder Prize. My work is my own. What I orchestrated, sir, was my own survival." Francine took over. "Leah, please tell the jury, in your own words, what you are asking for today." I turned to the 12 men and women who held the truth in their hands. "A year ago," I said, my voice steady, "I baked a pie. I brought it to my family's home as a gift. It was a recipe that belonged to my mother, a woman I never knew. It was my only connection to her. When I offered it, my stepmother raised her hand. It was not to accept the gift. It was to strike me for offering it. That act of violence was the final, structural failure of a house that was already rotten to the foundation. My father's silence was the negligence that let the rot spread. Their campaign to destroy my career afterward was their attempt to burn down the evidence. I am an architect. I believe in sound structures. I believe in clear boundaries. I am here today to ask you to build one. I am asking for full compensatory and punitive damages. I am asking for a permanent restraining order. I am asking for a court-ordered public apology to undo the lies they told. And I am asking that Cassandra and Richard Hale be mandated to oversee the full, audited restitution of every single dollar they stole from the people they pretended to serve. I finished. The room was quiet. The jury was out for less than 2 hours. The verdict was a clean sweep. They found for me on all 3 counts: assault, defamation, and tortious interference. The judge, who had presided over the subsequent criminal indictments and seen the full scope of the fraud, was ruthless in his judgment. He awarded the full 7-figure sum Francine had requested. He ordered a public apology, the text of which would be drafted by my counsel and approved by the court, to be published in the Westbridge Herald. He made the restraining order permanent, and he affirmed the civil court's demand that all of Cassandra's and Richard's personal, non-frozen assets be liquidated to begin the restitution of the Hale Foundation's stolen funds, under the supervision of a court-appointed trustee. It was total. It was final. The criminal trial would be a formality, a sentencing. The war was over. I walked out of the courthouse, Francine at my side, into the cold, clean air. Richard was standing by the pillar, his face gray. He looked a decade older. "Leah," he whispered, stepping forward. "Please, don't let this be the end. I am still your father." I looked at him. I saw the empty space where a support beam should have been. I saw the hollow core. I did not say a word. I simply looked past him, to where June, Theo, and Riley were waiting for me by the car. I walked straight past him. The boundary held. Aria Bell rushed up, her microphone extended. "Leah, the architect of boundaries, you won. You got justice. What do you want to say?" I paused for a moment, looking into her camera. "Don't ever confuse silence with acceptance," I said. "Silence is just the noise before the truth finally decides to speak." That night, it was not a party. It was a gathering. My cabin at Pinecrest Ridge. The new kitchen was warm, the fireplace crackling, the air smelled of hickory and pine. June and Theo were on the sofa. Sloane and Evelyn were sitting at the new walnut island, quietly talking. Riley walked in last, carrying a familiar white box from the gilded crust. She set it on the soapstone counter. "I figured it was time," she said softly. Inside was a perfect, glistening pecan pie. My mother's recipe. She didn't hand me a server. She handed me a chef's knife. My hand was steady. I made the first cut. I looked around the room, at the small, strong, resilient structure of the family I had built for myself. I lit a single, white candle and placed it on the counter. It was not a plea. It was not a prayer. It was a beacon. It was a small, steady flame, marking the foundation of a new era, an era of safe boundaries. An era where, in my home, when someone raises their hand, it is only to lift you up, never to strike you down. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Let me know what you think in the comments, and tell me where in the world you're listening from. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.